Marcus Hale sat alone in his small office, the dim light from the neon signs outside flickering across his desk. It was past midnight, and the rain outside tapped against the window like a slow clock counting down the end of his career. He had been a detective for 15 years. About this case, the missing high-security data crystal was unlike anything he had ever faced. The thief had left no clues, no fingerprints, no security camera images, nothing. Even the best forensics team had found nothing but empty air. Marcus knew that if he failed, it would be his last case in the city. Then he heard a rumor in the back alleys of the market, a name whispered between smugglers and street cleaners: Laura. They said she was from the Sonari race. Aliens with senses so sharp they could smell the difference between 2 drops of water from different rivers. They could detect lies by the change in a person's sweat, track a scent weeks old through the busiest crowd, and even sense danger before it happened. But Laura was trouble. She had been banned from official work after an incident the government never explained. Some said she was reckless. Others said she was dangerous. Marcus didn't care. If she was half as good as the rumors said, she was his only chance. So he called in a favor, got her contact, and left a message asking to meet. He didn't expect her to walk into his office less than an hour later. The door creaked open, and a tall, slim figure stepped inside. Wearing a black hooded coat dripping with rain, her skin was pale silver, her eyes a deep shade of amber that seemed to glow in the dim light. Her hair, long and dark, had a strange shine to it, like it had caught the moonlight. She didn't say hello, didn't sit down. Instead, she lifted her head slightly and sniffed the air. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "You must be Laura," he said. She nodded slowly, her eyes scanning the room like she could see more than walls and furniture. "Someone was here before me," she said in a low voice. Marcus frowned. "My assistant, maybe Laura," shook her head. "No, this scent is fresh male, heavy boots, leather gloves." He was standing right there. She pointed at the corner near the window. Marcus's stomach tightened. No one should have been in here, not tonight. And then she added something that made him lean forward. "This man, the one who was just here, smells like the same person who stole your data crystal." Marcus froze. "How could you possibly know that?" he asked. She stepped closer, her movements slow, controlled. "I have smelled that scent before, in the underground markets," she replied. "He is dangerous, and he knows you are after him." Marcus stared at her for a moment. If she was lying, she was the best liar he had ever met. If she was telling the truth, the thief had been standing in his office tonight, watching him. That meant the case wasn't cold, it was burning. And if the thief knew where he worked, it also meant Marcus was now part of the game, not just the hunter. "I need your help," Marcus said finally. "Name your price." Laura tilted her head. "Double my usual fee, half now." "Off. When I bring you the crystal?" Marcus nodded, reaching into his desk drawer for the payment chip. She took it, slipped it into her coat, and without another word, she turned and headed for the door. "Wait," Marcus called out. "Where are you going?" "To follow the scent before it fades," she replied, her voice calm but her pace quick. Marcus grabbed his coat and followed her into the rainy streets. The city was alive even at night. Neon lights reflecting in puddles, engines humming, voices echoing through narrow alleys. But Laura moved through the crowd like she was following an invisible thread. She sniffed the air, glanced at the ground, then moved faster. Marcus struggled to keep up. He had hired her less than an hour ago, and already it felt like he was being dragged into something much bigger than he imagined. Every step she took seemed more urgent, her eyes scanning, her nose twitching. Finally, she stopped in front of a narrow alley and looked back at him. "He was here," she said softly. Marcus glanced into the shadows, seeing nothing but trash cans and dripping pipes. Then Laura's voice dropped even lower. And he is still here. Marcus's hand went to his sidearm. The rain felt colder now, the air heavier. Somewhere in the darkness, a faint sound echoed, the soft scrape of a boot against wet concrete. Marcus realized this wasn't just an unusual job offer. It was the start of something far more dangerous than he had planned. Marcus followed close behind Laura, his boots splashing in the shallow puddles as the rain turned heavier. The alley felt tighter with every step they took, the tall walls on. Each side made it feel like a tunnel with no end. Laura kept her head low, but her nose twitched like a hunting animal. Her movements were sharp, yet silent. She stopped suddenly and placed a finger to her lips. Marcus froze, listening. There was no sound except the rain and his own breathing. She knelt down, touching the wet ground, then inhaled deeply. The way her eyes narrowed made Marcus uneasy. "He's moving fast," she whispered. "And he's not alone." Marcus's chest tightened. The thief having backup was bad enough. But if those backups were the same kind of people who could sneak into his office unnoticed, then they were in trouble. Laura stood quickly and began walking again. Her pace doubling, Marcus was forced to almost jog to keep up. They passed through the back of the alley into a wider street where neon signs buzzed above strange shops still open at this late hour. Food stalls filled the air with the scent of fried oil and sweet spices. But Laura didn't even glance at them. "It's harder here," she muttered. "Too many smells." She closed her eyes for a moment and then turned sharply into a side street without warning. Marcus followed, his hand never leaving the grip of his weapon. The trail took them to an old warehouse district where the city's glow didn't reach. Broken street lamps left large patches of darkness between flickers of pale yellow light. Laura slowed her steps and raised her head slightly. The way she sniffed the air looked almost unnatural. "He's inside that one," she said, pointing to a rusted metal building with a half-broken door hanging loosely. Marcus's instincts screamed caution. "We should call for backup," he said, but she shook her head. "By the time they come, the scent will be gone." They approached the door quietly, Laura stepping first, her hand brushing the metal as she pushed it open just enough to slip inside. Marcus followed. The air inside was colder and smelled faintly of oil and metal. Though Marcus could barely notice it, Laura paused in the shadows, scanning the darkness with her sharp eyes. Marcus could feel his heartbeat in his ears. They moved deeper into the building, avoiding the broken glass on the floor. Then came a sudden sound, a faint metallic click from somewhere in the dark. Laura's head snapped to the left. "Trap," she whispered. Marcus barely had time to react before the heavy door slammed shut behind them with a loud clang, plunging them into darkness. The sound of locking mechanisms echoed. Sealing them inside, footsteps followed. Not one set, but several, echoing off the metal walls. Marcus pulled his gun, aiming toward the sound. "Who's there?" His voice was steady, but his finger tightened on the trigger. A deep voice laughed from somewhere ahead. "You shouldn't have come, detective." Marcus glanced at Laura, but she kept her eyes forward, sniffing as if ignoring the threat. "That's not him," she said quietly. "That's someone masking his scent." Marcus frowned, unsure if he heard her right. Masking scent wasn't something humans could do. From the shadows, figures began to step forward, 3 of them, tall and wearing long coats that almost brushed the floor, their faces hidden by masks. One of them spoke again. "You're looking for something that doesn't belong to you." Marcus raised his weapon higher. It was stolen from the city's security vault. The masked man chuckled. "And now it's far away from your reach." Laura stepped forward slightly, her voice calm. "You're hiding something on you." "The crystal isn't far. I can smell the case it's in." One of the masked figures tilted his head. "You shouldn't be able to," he said. Sounding more curious than afraid, Marcus could see the tension building. The moment would explode into action any second. Laura suddenly looked back at Marcus, her amber eyes flashing. "When I move, follow me," she whispered. She moved faster than he expected, lunging toward the nearest masked figure. Marcus fired a shot at another who tried to flank them. Chaos filled the warehouse, the air sharp with the smell of burning powder and metal scraping. One of the masked attackers tried to grab Laura, but she twisted free and kicked him into a stack of rusted crates. Marcus fired again, hitting the shoulder of the tallest one. They didn't stay to finish the fight. Laura grabbed Marcus's sleeve and pulled him toward a sidewall where a small ventilation opening sat half covered with debris. "In here," she ordered. Marcus didn't argue. They squeezed inside, crawling through the narrow, dust-choked shaft as shouts and footsteps echoed behind them after what felt like minutes. They emerged into another alley on the far side of the building, rain falling harder now. Marcus leaned against the wall, catching his breath. "You could have told me it was a trap," he said. Laura glanced at him, water running down her silver skin. "I told you," she replied simply. "You just didn't hear me." Marcus sighed, wiping rain from his face. "So where does the trail lead now?" Laura closed her eyes, inhaling deeply, despite the storm washing away scents. "Not far," she said, "but there's something you should know. The scent isn't pure, it's mixed, like two people worked together, and one of them smells familiar to you." Marcus's eyes narrowed. Familiar how? Laura opened her eyes and met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "It's someone you trust." Rain seemed colder at that moment. Marcus stared at Laura, rain dripping from the edge of his coat. The street around them was empty except for the glow of a single flickering light above a closed shop. Her words replayed in his mind. Someone you trust. It was a cruel thought. His circle was small. Most people he called friends were in the department, and the idea that one of them could be part of this made his chest feel heavy. Laura didn't wait for him to speak. She turned sharply and began walking down the street, her boots splashing through the growing puddles. Marcus caught up, his eyes scanning every shadow. "If you know who it is, just say it," he muttered. Laura shook her head without looking back. "I don't know yet. I only know the scent." Marcus almost laughed at the absurdity of it, solving crimes by smell. But tonight had already proved she wasn't just making claims. They crossed into a quieter district, the kind of place where most windows stayed dark and the few lights that burned only made the darkness seem deeper. The rain eased into a light mist, enough for Marcus to hear the faint hum of a distant generator. Laura stopped at an intersection, tilting her head like she was listening to something only she could hear. Then she turned left without a word. The street ended at a building Marcus knew well, the old storage hub once used by the police before they moved to a newer facility. He hadn't been inside in years. The city still owned it, and the only people with keys were senior officers, his stomach turned at the thought. Laura approached the locked door, sniffed the handle, and gave Marcus a long look. "The scent is stronger here," she said quietly, "very strong." Marcus stepped closer. Testing the handle, it was locked, but the lock looked newer than it should have. Like it had been replaced recently, he pulled out his override chip and pressed it to the panel. The door clicked open. They stepped inside. The air was thick, stale, and carried a faint chemical tang. Laura moved ahead, her eyes scanning the dusty floor in the far corner under a heavy tarp. Something caught her attention. She knelt down, pulling the tarp aside. Beneath it was a black crate with a security seal Marcus recognized property of the city's evidence vault. He crouched beside her. "This shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low. Laura didn't answer. She was too busy inhaling slowly. Then her expression shifted, her eyes narrowing. "The person who handled this crate. It's the same scent from your office," before Marcus could process it. A sound echoed through the building, the metallic slam of another door closing. Followed by slow, deliberate footsteps, Marcus drew his gun and motioned for Laura to stay. Lo, the footsteps grew louder until a figure emerged from the shadows. The dim light revealed a familiar face, Captain Rourke, Marcus's superior. The man who had assigned him this case in the first place. Rourke's eyes flicked from Marcus to Laura, then to the uncovered crate. His jaw tightened. "I was hoping you wouldn't find this place," he said, his tone almost regretful. Marcus kept his weapon steady. "Tell me you're not part of this," Rourke exhaled, stepping closer. "It's not what you think," but Laura's voice cut through, calm and sharp. "He's lying." Marcus didn't need to ask how she knew. Rourke glanced at her with open dislike. "You brought a Sonari into this? Marcus, do you even know what she's capable of?" Marcus didn't lower his gun. "All I know is she's closer to the truth than anyone else." Rourke shook his head, taking another step forward. "You're in over your head, both of you." And then, us, faster than Marcus expected, Rourke's hand went to his sidearm. The next moments blurred. Marcus fired first, the shot hitting the wall as Rourke dove behind a pillar. Laura moved like lightning, circling wide as Marcus laid down cover fire. The echo of gunfire filled the building. Sparks jumped from metal. Rourke tried to retreat toward the side door, but Laura was already there, blocking his path. She didn't touch him, just stood still, breathing in, her eyes narrowing further. "There's another scent on you. Something not human." Rourke's face twitched, and for the briefest second, Marcus thought he saw fear. Then Rourke lunged forward, slamming his shoulder into Laura and breaking past her. Marcus chased. But by the time he reached the door, Rourke was gone into the rain, the street empty once more. Marcus lowered his weapon slowly, his mind racing. "So my captain is working with someone else. Maybe not even human," he said. Almost to himself, Laura stepped beside him. The other scent was faint. "Masked, but I've smelled it before in the outer market. It's not someone local." Marcus knew then that this case was spiraling beyond his city, beyond his department. They left the storage building and walked in silence. The mist curling around them, somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Laura glanced at him briefly. "You're still not ready to know the full truth," she said. Marcus almost laughed again after tonight. "I'm ready for anything," but the look she gave him told him otherwise. And in that quiet moment, Marcus realized something important. The most dangerous part of this job wasn't the thief or the crystal. It was the fact that he didn't know how much Laura was really telling him, and whether her version of the truth would lead him to justice or somewhere far darker. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat in his small apartment, the blinds half closed, the glow of the city seeping through in pale blue stripes. Laura sat opposite him, quiet, her amber eyes reflecting the faint light. She hadn't spoken since they left the storage hub, and that silence felt heavier than any words. Finally, Marcus broke it. "If you knew Rourke was dirty, why didn't you say it earlier?" Laura's gaze didn't waver. "Because I didn't know how deep it went," she said, her tone calm. "And because if I told you too soon, you might have run to him and you'd be dead by now." Marcus leaned back, exhaling slowly. She wasn't wrong, but he didn't like the idea that she was playing her own game. Her communicator beeped softly. She pulled it from her coat, glanced at the small holo display, and her expression shifted. She stood up. "We have to move." Now, Marcus grabbed his coat. "Where?" She didn't answer. Only walked to the door, her pace sharp. They ended up in the lower docks, a maze of rusted shipping containers and loading cranes. The air was thick with the smell of salt water and engine oil. A faint fog rolled in from the bay. Laura moved quickly between shadows, avoiding the few dock workers still around. Marcus followed, trying to spot their destination. They reached an old container with faded markings. Laura pressed her hand against a hidden panel and it hissed open. Inside was a small room lit by a single overhead lamp. A table sat in the middle, and at it, surprisingly, was Captain Rourke. Marcus froze, hand going for his weapon, but Laura stepped in front of him. "Don't," she said, her voice sharper than usual. Rourke raised his hand slightly. "You think I'm your enemy," he said, "but you're wrong, Hale." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "You broke into my case, stole evidence, and tried to shoot me. Explain how that makes you a friend." Rourke's jaw tightened. "Because I'm trying to keep you alive," he said. "You're chasing the crystal, but it's not just a piece of stolen tech. It's a key, literally, to a vault built before either of our species walked this planet." Marcus didn't answer. His eyes flicked to Laura, who looked at Rourke with an unreadable expression. Then Rourke added something that made Marcus's grip tighten on his weapon, "And your partner knows more about it than she's telling you." Marcus turned slowly to Laura. "Is that true?" She didn't flinch. "I know what the crystal is," she admitted. "I didn't tell you because it changes nothing. We still have to find it before they do." Marcus's mind spun. "They," he echoed, before either of them could say more. The container door slammed shut from the outside. The light above flickered, and the walls shook slightly. Muffled footsteps surrounded them. Laura's nose twitched once, and she swore under her breath. "Not his men," she said. "Someone else." A deep voice echoed through the thin metal walls. "Detective Hale Laura, Captain Rourke." "You've been busy." Marcus recognized the tone. Calm, confident. The kind of voice that didn't belong to someone afraid of consequences. The sound of metal scraping followed, like something heavy being dragged. Rourke moved to one side of the container, pressing his ear to the wall. "We're boxed in," he muttered. Laura crouched low, sniffing. "I count 4, maybe 5. Not human." She looked up at Marcus. "When the door opens, don't hesitate." Marcus gave her a short nod, though he wasn't sure what she meant. The lock clicked, and the door slid open with a sharp hiss. The fog from outside poured in, and with it came tall, thin figures wearing cloaks that shimmered in the dim light. Their faces hidden by smooth black masks, each carried a long, curved weapon that seemed to hum faintly. The one in front stepped closer, his head tilting toward Laura. "The Sonari with the cursed scent," he said, his voice carrying a strange metallic echo. Laura straightened slowly, her expression calm. "And you must be the cloaked cowards who think shadows make you untouchable." The figure's grip tightened on his weapon. Without warning, Laura moved, faster than Marcus could follow. She slammed into the lead attacker, knocking him backward into another. Rourke fired his sidearm, the sound deafening in the small space. Marcus followed suit, forcing 2 of them back through the doorway. The fog outside swallowed the fight, shapes moving in and out like ghosts. One of the cloaked figures reached for Marcus, but Laura appeared from the side, grabbing the attacker's mask and ripping it away. The face beneath wasn't human. Its skin dark and ridged, eyes a deep violet, and its mouth twisted in something between a snarl and a smile. Before it could strike, Laura's blade was at its throat. The remaining attackers retreated into the mist, moving as quickly as they had appeared. The dock fell silent, except for the faint hum of the bay's machinery. Marcus stood breathing hard, his weapon still raised. "Someone want to tell me what the hell that was?" he demanded. Rourke straightened his coat. "They're the reason I took the crystal and the reason she's here," he said, nodding toward Laura, "because whether you trust her or not, she's the only one who can track them before they vanish again." Marcus looked at Laura, but she didn't meet his eyes. She was already staring into the fog, and in that moment, Marcus realized that whatever game they were in, it wasn't about loyalty anymore. It was about survival. And the line between friend and enemy was fading fast. The fog at the docks didn't lift. It clung to the ground like it had been poured there on purpose. Marcus stayed close to Laura. As they left the container yard, Rourke following a few steps behind, none of them spoke. The quiet between them was not the calm kind, it was the heavy kind. The kind that made every breath feel louder than it should. Laura stopped suddenly, her head turning slightly. She sniffed the air once, her voice low. "They're still here." Marcus scanned the fog but saw nothing. "Where?" he asked. Laura didn't answer right away. Her eyes narrowed, too close. She said finally, before Marcus could respond. A faint shimmer rippled in the air ahead of them. Like heat rising from asphalt, he blinked. And in that blink, the shimmer was gone. "Tell me you saw that," he muttered. Rourke stepped closer. "Cloak tech," he said. "Good kind. The kind you don't find on any legal market." Laura's expression was unreadable. "They're masking scent too," she said, "but I can still trace it if I focus." She took a slow breath, her posture tightening. Marcus watched her like he was seeing her work for the first time. Her eyes flicked left, then right. Then she started walking toward the far end of the dock. They followed her through a service gate, into an empty parking zone where cargo skiffs once waited for loading. The air smelled faintly of burned metal. Laura crouched beside a dark scorch mark on the ground. "Landing zone," she murmured. "Small shuttle. No registration." Rourke's jaw tightened. "Means they're not just hiding on the ground." Marcus's stomach dropped. "You think they've got a ship in orbit?" Laura stood, looking past them toward the night sky. "I don't think," she said. "I know." That's when the sound came. A low hum, not from the sky, but from somewhere above the mist. It grew louder. A shadow passed across the faint light of the city skyline. Marcus reached for his weapon, even though he knew it would be useless against something flying overhead. Rourke was already speaking into a come, his words quick and clipped. The shadow above shifted. And for a split second, Marcus saw the shape. Sleek, long, no markings. No lights except for the faint blue glow under its hull. "Luxury class transport," Rourke said grimly. "Disguised as a private cruiser, probably has a vault inside." Laura's voice was sharper now. "That's where the crystal is." Marcus frowned. "How do you know?" She didn't look at him. "Because I can smell the casing even from here." Marcus glanced at Rourke. "We need to get aboard." Rourke shook his head. "You don't just walk onto a ship like that. It's invite-only high clearance." Laura's lips curled slightly. "Then we get invited." The plan came together faster than Marcus expected. Rourke had contacts in port security, and within an hour they had forged passenger credentials under fake names. Laura changed into a dark, sleek jacket that made her blend with the high-class travelers. Marcus adjusted his own suit, feeling like he'd stepped into someone else's skin. Boarding the ship was almost too easy. The crew didn't look twice. At their documents, the interior was nothing like Marcus imagined. Polished silver walls, soft lighting that shifted colors like water. Quiet music drifting through the air. The air was perfumed, but Laura still moved with the same slow, deliberate pace. Sniffing lightly as they walked, they split up inside to draw less attention. Marcus moved toward the lounge, while Laura disappeared into one of the quieter corridors. His cum crackled softly after a few minutes. Her voice low. "Trail is faint, but it's here." Heading toward the restricted deck, Marcus started walking. Casually in that direction, Rourke's voice cut in, "Careful. The restricted deck will have scanners. You trip one, and the whole ship will know." Marcus reached the corridor where Laura was waiting. She nodded toward a heavy door with gold trim behind that, she whispered. Marcus leaned close. "What exactly is behind it?" Laura's reply was almost a breath. "The crystal." "And someone else." Marcus felt the hairs on his neck rise. "Someone else," she nodded. "The second scent, the one I couldn't place before." It's stronger here. Before they could decide their next move, a pair of well-dressed guards appeared at the end of the corridor, their faces calm but their eyes sharp. One of them spoke politely. "This area is off-limits. Please return to the lounge." Marcus forced a smile. Of course, but Laura didn't move. Her eyes locked on one of the guards. "Marcus," she said quietly. "That's him." The guard tilted his head. "Do I know you?" he asked, his tone still smooth. Laura's reply was simple. "No, but I know what you did." The guard's hand twitched toward the weapon at his side. Marcus moved first, grabbing the man's wrist. The other guard stepped forward, but Laura slammed her palm into his chest, sending him into the wall. The alarm didn't go off. Not yet. But Marcus knew they had seconds. Laura leaned close to the first guard, inhaling slowly, her expression cold. "You've been carrying the crystal. It's in the vault. And you're going to take us there?" And in that tense moment, Marcus realized there was no turning back. They weren't just hunting a thief anymore. They were walking straight into the heart of whatever game had started back on the streets. And the real danger was still ahead. The guard's eyes darted between Marcus and Laura. His breathing uneven now, the calm mask on his face starting to crack. Laura's voice stayed steady. "Walk," she ordered. He hesitated for half a second, then turned and began leading them down the corridor. Marcus followed close behind, his hand never far from his concealed sidearm. The corridor narrowed, the walls changing from polished metal to reinforced plating. The air felt colder here, quieter, as if the sounds of the rest of the ship couldn't reach this place. The guard stopped at a thick security door with a glowing lock panel. He pressed his hand against it, and the door slid open with a heavy hiss. Inside was a narrow chamber lined with shimmering blue energy grids. Another door at the far end glowed faintly with golden light. Laura sniffed once, and her lips pressed into a thin line. "It's in there," she murmured. The guard stepped aside, keeping his gaze fixed on the floor. Marcus pushed forward, but the moment they passed through the second door, it slammed shut behind them with a metallic thud. Marcus spun, his instincts kicking in. The guard was gone, replaced by the hiss of locking mechanisms, the walls around them shifting slightly, panels sliding into place. Laura's eyes swept the room, her voice tight. "It's a containment vault." Marcus looked around. "That's a good thing, right?" But Laura's reply was blunt. "Not for us." The floor vibrated softly, and from hidden vents in the ceiling, a pale mist began to pour in. Marcus coughed as it reached his face. It wasn't thick, but it carried a faint chemical bite. Laura stayed calm, though her eyes narrowed as she inhaled. "Stasis gas," she said. "If we breathe too much, we'll be out cold in minutes." Marcus moved to the control panel near the door, trying every command he could think of. Nothing responded. The interface wasn't standard. It was alien, its symbols flowing like liquid lines instead of hard shapes. Laura moved past him, crouching near the wall, her fingers feeling for something. "There's a manual override somewhere," she said. "But it's different." The golden glow from the far side of the room caught Marcus's eye. He stepped toward it, and there, inside a transparent case suspended by magnetic fields, was the crystal, smaller than he expected. No bigger than a fist, but its surface pulsed with faint light, like it was breathing. Marcus reached for the case, but Laura's sharp voice stopped him. "Don't touch it. It's keyed to a biolock." Before Marcus could ask what that meant, a voice filled the room, calm, deep, and too familiar. "You've done well making it this far." Marcus froze, recognizing it instantly. Captain Rourke. But this time, his tone carried something else. Not the weary authority of a superior, but the confidence of someone who is in full control. A section of the wall shimmered, revealing Rourke standing behind a transparent barrier, dressed not in his uniform, but in a sleek black coat with unfamiliar markings on the collar. His eyes flicked between them. "You still don't understand." "Do you?" Marcus's voice came out rough. "I understand enough. You set me up, you set her up." Rourke smiled faintly. "Set you up, yes, but for good reason. The crystal doesn't belong to the city. It doesn't belong to Earth. It belongs to those who can use it without destroying themselves." His gaze shifted to Laura, and she is one of them. Marcus looked at Laura sharply. "You knew." Laura's voice was cold. "I knew it was dangerous. I didn't know you were the one protecting it for them." The floor under their feet shifted again, lowering slightly, the mist thinning for a moment before new vents opened. Rourke spoke almost casually. "In a few minutes, you'll be asleep. The crystal will stay where it belongs, and no one will know you were ever here." Marcus felt the slow burn of frustration rise, his eyes darting around the room. Searching for a way out, Laura's gaze locked on a small seam in the wall. She moved toward it quickly, pressing her hand against it, her nose twitching slightly. "Found it," she whispered. Marcus moved beside her. "What?" "The pressure line," she said. "Break it and the gas won't fill the room." Marcus didn't hesitate. Pulling a small blade from his coat, he jammed it into the seam. Twisting hard until the hiss from the vents cut off, Rourke's expression changed, the smooth confidence cracking. "You can't win, Hale," he said. Marcus shot him a glare. "I don't have to win. I just have to get out." Laura moved to the crystal's case, her hands hovering just above it. She inhaled slowly, then pressed her palm to a small indentation on the base. The glow flared, and the magnetic field dropped, the crystal settling into her hand like it had been waiting for her. The barrier between them and Rourke began to lower, but alarms blared from hidden speakers, the lights shifting to a deep red. Rourke stepped forward, drawing a weapon Marcus had never seen before, its barrel pulsing faintly with blue light, and in that instant, Marcus knew the real fight was about to start, and this time, there was no guarantee any of them would leave the ship alive. The air between Marcus and Rourke felt charged. The deep red lights pulsed like a heartbeat. Laura stood in the center of the vault, with the crystal glowing faintly in her hands. Her gaze fixed on Rourke, Marcus could hear the distant thrum of the ship's engines. Steady, but somehow louder now, as if the vessel itself knew a fight was about to break out. Rourke didn't rush. He stepped forward slowly, the strange blue-lit weapon steady in his grip. "Hand it over, Laura," he said, his voice calm but layered with threat. Laura's amber eyes narrowed. "You want it so your friends in the cloaks can use it," she said. "You're not keeping it safe. You're delivering it to them." Rourke's jaw tightened. "And what will you do with it? Run? Hide? Pretend you're not a danger to everyone around you?" Marcus shifted his stance, keeping himself between Rourke and Laura. "You had me chasing ghosts while you were the one holding the leash," he said. "You wanted me out of the way, but I'm still here." Rourke's eyes flicked to him, cold and calculating. "And you'll regret that." The moment broke when Rourke fired, the blue bolt streaking through the air with a low hum. Marcus dove to the side, the shot striking the wall and sending a ripple through the strange alien material. Laura moved like lightning, rolling across the floor and coming up behind a support column. She pressed her palm against the crystal, the glow brightening as if it were alive. Rourke fired again, this time at her, but Marcus stepped into the line of fire, the bolt grazing his shoulder, the heat biting deep into his skin. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the pain. "You'll have to do better," he said, his voice rough. Laura's voice came sharp from the shadows. "Cover me." Marcus didn't hesitate, firing his sidearm in controlled bursts, forcing Rourke to move back toward the barrier door. Laura darted forward, her movements so fast they blurred. She slammed her hand into the floor panel, and the vault shuddered, a hidden hatch opening beneath Rourke's feet. He stumbled but caught himself, firing wildly. One shot striking the crystal in Lura's hands. The glow flared so brightly Marcus had to shield his eyes. The air filled with a sharp, almost metallic scent. Lura held the crystal tighter, and for a moment Marcus thought she might drop it. Rourke's face changed, fear breaking through the control. "You don't know what you're holding," he shouted. "It's not just a key. It's alive." Lura's voice was steady. "Then it knows who not to trust." And she pressed her palm against its surface again. The vault's walls began to shift, panels folding back to reveal a narrow escape shaft. The alarms grew louder. A mechanical voice speaking in a language Marcus didn't understand. Rourke lunged toward them, but Marcus met him halfway, slamming into him with enough force to send them both to the ground. They grappled, Rourke's weapons skidding away. Lura didn't wait. She grabbed Marcus by the collar and yanked him toward the shaft. Rourke reached for her, but the hatch door snapped shut between them, sealing him inside the vault, his shouts fading as they slid down the narrow shaft, the metal warm under their hands. They dropped into a maintenance corridor somewhere deep in the ship's lower decks. The lights here were dim, the air smelling faintly of coolant. Marcus leaned against the wall, catching his breath, his shoulder burning from the hit. "So, now what?" he asked. Lura glanced at the crystal in her hands. "Now we disappear before the ship locks down." They moved quickly through the narrow corridors, avoiding crew and security. Finally reaching an emergency escape pod bay, Marcus climbed into one, Lura following, sealing the hatch. The pod launched with a violent jolt, the ship shrinking. Behind them, into the distance, its sleek shape glowing faintly against the starfield. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the pod's engines filling the silence, Marcus finally said, "You could have left me behind." Lura's gaze stayed on the stars ahead. "You're useful," she said simply. Then after a pause, "And you don't smell like a liar." Marcus gave a dry laugh. "That's the nicest thing you've said to me," as the pod drifted farther from the ship. Marcus looked at the crystal. "So what happens now?" Lura's eyes met his, calm but unreadable. "Now it's mine to protect, and yours to keep people from finding me." Marcus shook his head. "That sounds like trouble." Her lips curved slightly. "It will be somewhere behind them." The luxury ship turned slowly, its engines flaring as it changed course. Rourke would survive. Marcus knew it, and when he did, he'd come for them. The game wasn't over. It had only just changed. Marcus leaned back in the seat, watching the stars blur past, wondering if he'd just stepped into something far bigger than a stolen crystal. And knowing that with Lura around, it would never go as planned.